In 2024, I made a game in each month. That is 12 games in a year. I made games in many different genres, have learned a lot, and had tremendous amount of fun while doing so. What am I talking about exactly? There is a thing called One Game a Month Game Jam, and it has a Hungarian version called Havi Egy Játék in Hungarian, or HEJ for short. I participated in it in 2020 and 2021, I have skipped it in 2022 and 2023, but in 2024 I decided to complete all 12 games, and I did. So I thought I would share my experience about this year-long Game Jam series. I do not want to talk about the games themselves too much, since I made a separate video about each game. Instead, I want to talk about my overall experience. Why did I join this Jam series? After all, I started learning and using the Unity engine in 2020, and in 2023 I felt I have all the knowledge I need to finally start my dream game. I made progress with the character controller and the inventory system. Then, towards the end of the year, came the Unity runtime fee scandal, and, as a form of protest, I decided to stop using Unity for a while and start learning the Unreal Engine instead. But learning a new engine is hard, and it is especially hard if there is another engine that you know how to use and which fulfills your needs. Who wants to spend time on learning how to make a character move in a new engine when you already know how to make a climbing system, interaction system, or inventory system in another one? The Hey 2024 Game Jam series came at the best time for me because it gave me motivation to relearn making the basic character movement and interactions and timers in a brand new engine. The Great Escape. However, the game I made for January was actually made in Unity instead of Unreal because I managed my time poorly and I needed to make the game fast. Since I wanted to learn Unreal, I was not too pleased with myself, but looking back at it, I am glad that it turned out this way because even I was astonished at how fast I could put this game together, mostly from my previously written codes and systems, and it was a good reassurance that designing flexible systems is worth the extra effort. BuSHOW. In February, I managed to make the game in Unreal Engine proper. It was a 2D game. I only used UI elements, but as a first project it was perfect. The game mechanics are also very basic. I copied the mechanics of a board game that I played when I was a child. And the funny thing is, despite its simplicity, or maybe because of it, this game became one of my favorites among the 12 games I made for this jam. Freedom. The game I made for March was very basic. Some trigger events, some interactable objects. You can call it a mini walking sim. However, the interesting part about this game is that I used C++ to make some parts of it, such as the interaction interface. Another point worth mentioning is that this game is the typical beginner Unreal Engine game. It uses high quality assets with zero gameplay and bad performance. This game was a necessary stepping stone in my Unreal Engine learning journey, but a totally forgettable one. Easter Egg Hunt. The game for April was another walking sim of sort, but this one is a bit more interesting. I also used C++ for some functionality, but the main feature of the game, the trail that leads the player to the next randomly generated target location, was written in Blueprint. This time the art is much more unique. To improve on the performance issues that were present in the previous game, I used low poly assets. I personally do not have issue with low poly assets. What I do not like about the low poly style is the lack of textures. I used to take photos of interesting surfaces, such as rocks, tree barks or walls, and I use these as textures to spice up the low poly assets. The result reminds me of the art style of some older games, and I actually like it a lot. Bomb Disposal Squad. For me, I really wanted to make a game that was not a walking simulator. To be more efficient with my time, I decided to use only blueprints. I managed to create 7 small levels, each requiring a different game mechanic, such as sprinting, platforming, shooting. This was the first Unreal Engine game in which I used an animated humanoid character, which turned out to be more complicated than I initially thought. Animated characters in Unity are actually easier to implement. All in all, I think this is a fun little game, and it is definitely not a walking simulator. Save them. The games I made for June and July are a little different. I am part of the Hungarian Tolkien Society, and I usually go to their summer camps. In 2024, I was asked if I wanted to hold a few day-long workshop during the camp, and I said yes. My idea was to have the workshop about game development, and based on a set of criteria, I concluded that Godot would be the perfect engine to teach. But I also had to learn it myself, so I figured I would submit my games in Godot for June and July. The June game was very basic when it comes to gameplay, but I have learned many things such as navigation, spawning, timers and collisions. Secrets of the Mosh Pit. While the June game was about learning the ropes, the July game was the prototype for the game I was planning to walk through during the workshop. It is a 2D platformer, probably the most common game type. It heavily relies on the Brecky's Godot tutorial, but I also added a few other functions as well, such as trigger events. The workshop was a success, and I found this 2-month-long detour from Unreal Engine quite interesting, but my goal was to learn Unreal, not Godot, so for August I was back at my original plan. UnBEARable. In August, I started working on the game relatively late. Because of this, the game became something completely different than I initially wanted, and one could argue that it became a very basic and forgettable game. And it is true, I did not really learn anything new, there was no challenge in making this game. However, there was one aspect because of which I cannot say that making this game wasn't worth it. I work at an international engineering company and we have many internal tools, some of them even have their own logos. There is one program I use sometimes and it has issues. In the game, I use this logo as the enemy. When I showed the game to my colleagues, they laughed a lot, and one of the developers of the tool even tried the game and sent me a screenshot of his high score. I do believe that making other people laugh is a genuinely noble deed, and I am always humbled when I manage to make someone happy. Asteroid Avoider. If there were any pointless games I made for this gem, then it is the game I made for September. September was a busy month for me, I did not have too much time for game development, so I had to work within a limited time frame. I think we can agree that the world doesn't need another Flappy Bird clone. Yet, still, even for a game like this, I still managed to make something valuable out of it, because thanks to this game I started to research how to build an Unreal Engine game for mobile. I am not saying that if I ever want to make a mobile game I would use Unreal Engine, but I still think that this is a valuable knowledge. The Pilgrimage. The game I made for October is one that I am rather proud of. I used a 3D character for the player and I managed to transfer the animations to it from the Unreal Engine mannequin. I developed a pretty cool dialogue system for the game. I even made a tutorial about it if you're interested. I managed to create a spooky atmosphere with a respectable frame rate. This time I used Quixel Megascans assets instead of low poly, however I reduced the texture resolution and the mesh details to increase frame rates. And I used the PCG system to create the forest and the forest path. Gameplay-wise, there is nothing groundbreaking here, but all the stuff I have learned during the creation of this game are important for my future projects. Catch the Shapeshifter. The game I made for November is basically another walking simulator. Who would have guessed? What makes it interesting is that the game does not use any traditional user interface. Instead, the buttons are part of the 3D environment, hence they are included in the gameplay. People also mentioned that they love the art style and the slow introduction of color. Other than this, the November game is rather forgettable if you ask me, and by this I mean that there was no special system developed that I can use in a later project. 10 Musicians of Bremen. The December game was a real treat for me. However, it did not start that way. I am not a fan of rhythm games, yet I made one, and it turned out much better than I expected. Making the game system itself was fun, creating ways to reuse components, trigger the sounds and so on. I also enjoyed the process of creating the music itself, which can be weird given that I use Microsoft Excel to determine the place of each sound. And of course, the sounds themselves were unconventional as well, because I used animal sounds to create the music. I have learned a lot from this project, but what is equally important is that I had fun while doing so, especially when I played the finished song for my wife and our 2 dogs joined in the chorus. After each 3 completed game, the organizers awarded small 3D printed statues, and, having done all 12 games in 2024, I have received all 4 of them. There were another set of statues for people who developed games as a team, but since my goal was to learn the Unreal Engine, I figured it would be better for me to stay solo. So, was participating in a year-long game jam worth it? My answer is a definite yes. Making a game each month throughout a year may sound daunting, and it is. There were months when I only had a few days to work on the game, there were months when the themes just did not fit me at all, and making a game for these months felt like a chore and were not that memorable. But, on the other hand, there were months when the themes were perfect, when I had enough time to work on the game, and in these months I made games which I was proud of, games which the other participants found interesting and fun, and games that made me improve in my Unreal Engine skills and as a developer in general. And of course, there was the personal aspect. Meeting with like-minded developers once a month was a great experience, asking people how they develop their games, giving and receiving feedback, seeing what they come up with each month is invaluable. And of course, as a result of this, some opportunities might emerge. In January of 2025, I got the chance to present some of my games during the Hungarian Gamer Weekend event, where I got even more feedback, and I also saw some really good projects made by other developers. Luckily, the Game Jam series continues in 2025 as well, and the organizer started a new series of events in which they invite Hungarian developers who are working on commercial game projects to talk about their games. As for me, I am not planning on participating in 2025. As the result of the 2024 Game Jam series, I feel confident enough to start working on a larger game using the Unreal Engine. I started to learn game development with this goal in mind, after all. However, I do encourage everyone to join a game jam, and if you speak Hungarian, I highly encourage you to participate in the Hungarian One Game a Month Game Jam series in 2025. I will link their webpage down below. And if you want to know more about the games I presented in this video, check out this YouTube playlist. It contains a separate, more detailed video about each game. I might create one single video out of them for a more straightforward watching experience later. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I especially thank those of you who have watched my videos about the One Game a Month Game Jam series throughout 2024. You guys rock! See you in the next video. Bye!